All right, it is 1 o'clock. So I'm gonna go ahead and start this thing, if that's okay with y'all. Okay, cool. Welcome everybody to the games and game interactive type projects for the TAM program's Capstone course for 2020. We've got two guest reviewers here today. One of them has his camera on right now. The other one is temporarily off, it appears. Ben is here, Ben Wander. He's a game designer, writer, programmer, and teacher with over a decade of industry experience. He now makes indie games, including the critically acclaimed A Case of Distrust and the upcoming Airborne Kingdom. Hello, Ben. Thank you for joining us. And then we also have Pete Engstadt. He's a game designer and programmer, co-founder of Lion Shield Games, currently making Kingdoms and Castles, previously 7 Billion Humans, Abzu, and Cannon Brawl. Pete is a self-proclaimed crafter of niche computer entertainments, and he lives with his wife and children in a constant state of simultaneous joy and frustration. Hello, Pete.
And Nikki, I wanted to add that I forgot we had a third reviewer that's also with us. Peter Bury is here as well.
Wonderful, Peter. Good to see you.
Peter, do you want to introduce yourself since we don't have your bio?
Yeah. So I'm a PhD student. Can you hear me right now?
Yeah, we gotcha.
Okay. I'm a PhD student here at CU, occasionally teach some classes on games, and my work is mostly in the alternative game interfaces area.
Wonderful. Excited to have you. It's great we have three. Cool. Matt, can you add an extra row in our feedback and get Peter in there as well? Awesome, thanks. Okay, so then without further ado, let's go ahead and get the party started. Our first project comes from Jackie. It's called Confliction. Jackie, you can go ahead and take it away and screen share.
Hi, you guys can hear me fine?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. Hi, my name's Jackie, and my project is a game called Confliction. It's a platformer with a dynamic story in which the player will face difficulty in both the platforming and in making decisions. So it's kind of like Super Mario Bros, and it'll be another 2D side scroller, but with some story built in. So here's kind of a screenshot of what one of the levels kind of looks like. And then, so for the goal of Confliction, it's to make a game with a focus on replayability and to experiment with a bunch of mediums I wanted to gain more experience in. And so to do that, I made a game with only custom assets. Last semester, I researched what makes a game more replayable, and I decided to focus on two aspects of replayability, specifically difficulty and completion. Difficulty is covered by the usual nature of platformers because they're just supposed to be difficult, and that's what makes them fun. And we continue to play difficult games because it's another challenge that we can overcome. And for completion, it's covered by the story, which progresses as you play, and the path of the story changes depending on what you answer during the dialogue portions of the game. The multiple paths and endings will encourage the player to replay the game to get the full experience. And for experimenting with mediums, I've wanted to focus on mediums I don't yet have experience in, and to expand on the ones that I do have experience on. So mediums like music, pixel art, and story writing are all the mediums that I have little to no experience with. So I wanted to discover what it was like playing around with those. As for my influence, I don't have much experience with platformers other than Super Mario, so I decided to play a couple that piqued my interest. One of them being Super Meat Boy, which is a very difficult platformer with short levels. And I wanted to make my game similar to this, being short and difficult and all, but I would need to balance out the difficulty a bit more so that it wouldn't be as frustrating as Super Meat Boy, in order to give players more time to focus on the story of the game. And overall, it's a great game and even has an underlying story, but the story isn't something the player focuses on, which is why I have another influence, Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight has a very deep lore to it, which is one of the best things about it, and that's what makes it very interesting. Hollow Knight specifically isn't a platformer though, so it's actually a Metroidvania, but is a specific location in the game called the White Palace, and it's filled with difficult platforming puzzles. So I wanted to take the idea of the platforming puzzles and the excellent mobility options in the game and implement it into Confliction so that the players would have to stop and think about their actions before making a jump. As for my process, I chose to work on Confliction one medium at a time in order to focus specifically on certain ones and just use my time effectively. And so first, I established the background information on a Word document and outlined all the world building, the character development, and the progression on the game so that I have a basis on the story of Confliction. And then after I have the background established, I went over to Twinery and developed the storyboard for the progression and dialogue in the game. And this was a great way to visualize all the paths a player could take in the story, and it was also useful for marking where the levels would be for in between dialogue. And after I got the story, I started on the graphics, and I used a lightweight program called Sprite for my pixel art style graphic. And this is most of the sprite sheet for Confliction. And because of my lack of experience with pixel art, I had to look at a lot of references from either other games or pictures of real life. And the hardest part about working with pixel art was animating it, because I have the mindset for making the sprites pixel perfect. And it was unlike traditional 2D animation where the strokes didn't have to be perfect for the graphic to be animated well. So it took some time to get used to. But overall, I also had to simplify the art style to accommodate my lack of experience and for the sake of time. As for the level design, all my levels were done on paper prototypes before making their way into actual levels. And they were outlined on graphing paper so that I can easily see the player's jump height, where to position the platforms, and to mark the zones where there'd be danger and enemies and obstacles. And then after the paper prototypes, they'd be translated to the engine, where I would lay out the tiles and the objects needed and have the player levels play tested to make any changes if necessary. For the sound and music, I used FL Studio to create the tracks I needed and also to mix the sounds I had. And apart from what I learned in the sound class, I also had a previous interest in making music, so I learned a lot of techniques to add depth into my soundtracks, but most of it was trial and error and to get the tracks I wanted in the game. And then all this was thrown into the Unity engine where all the coding happened and where everything was combined together to make this short trailer for it. And that's it. Thank you for your time.
Becky. All right, we'll pass over to the reviewers for comments. Go ahead, Ben. Do it, Ben.
Okay. I'm unmuting my microphone. Here we go. No, I mean, this looks awesome. I think you can tell that you put a lot of time and effort into, learning how to do the art. We didn't hear the music on the trailer, but I listened to the trailer before this, and the music sounds really fantastic. The fact that you did everything is quite impressive. So seriously, super well done. I'm curious. I had a question of like, why a platformer? It felt like there were kind of two sides to your presentation. One was like the story is really interesting and you make many decisions and it's really cool, and then the other part is the platformer and the challenge and Super Meat Boy and everything. What tied those together for you? Why did you decide to combine them?
So what made me want to do a platformer was mainly because like how easy of a game it is to make, I guess. Because since this is an individual project, like I'm more into like stuff like FPSs and RPGs, but those would be like way too difficult to do by myself, especially without the experience I need. And so I saw platformer as like an easier game to make, and so I can also experiment with the mediums more easily. And also with the whole story aspect, I don't have a lot of experience with story writing, and that's something that I would like to be get into, and I'm interested in that. So I kind of wanted to add story into platforming because it's something that hasn't been done either, or at least not very often. So it's just something I kind of wanted to experiment with.
Cool. Yeah, I was actually curious. So looking at your trailer and your presentation, I wasn't really sure what the story was. Can you expand on that?
So basically it's you're a ball of mochi and you're produced in a factory, and then so you get launched off into this village where you meet um, a girl mochi called Moful, and she basically uh, gets attacked. The village she stays in gets attacked by ants, and ants are like the primary antagonists of this story. So, like basically the whole premise of the story is that then you find a way to repel the ants or fend off the ants in order to save the village. And yeah, there are multiple paths that the character can take based on the dialogue. And yeah, it's like I mean, I guess the main ending would be if you would just go straight to the ant hill and then just kill the queen and call it good. But yeah.
So spoil it for us. Like how different does it get? Like where do you go with it?
So there's a point where you basically loop back to the factory you were produced in, and you meet this old man, and he gives you options to either help him repair the machine that produces the mochi in order to extend the life of the village so that they'd have like more population, and every time the ants invade it, they just have new civilians. Or you could choose to either go to the anthill, which is where you kill the queen, or you can choose to go to a city called Modem, and there's basically this like super rich mochi in Modem that's been selling the village to the ants in order to save their own skin, basically. So the village was kind of a sacrifice for the ants so that Modem wouldn't get attacked.
And can I jump in really quickly? We've only got like a minute left, so
okay.
Oh, sorry.
Ben, I don't know if there's something else you want to wrap up, or if we can kick it over to the other guys. Okay, Pete, you're muted, Pete.
I played until the start of the ice level. I'll give you some game feel feedback.
All right.
The ants, the ones that shoot the little spit things at you, it'd be good if they had an anticipation frame.
Okay.
Because they just kind of, it just appears and it's really hard to time either avoiding it or hitting it when you use the ball.
So like either have a graphic or like some sound for anticipation.
Yeah, some like even an animation where they're like charging up or whatever, because then I could get that better. There was another another thing that I wanted an anticipation frame for, but I forgot what it was now. I did like the choices, the choice where I had to choose to continue my battle against the ants or find the piece for the machine to repair to keep making the mochi was surprisingly difficult because it had stakes, and I had seen the village and also had a little taste of dealing with the ants already. The choice in the beginning where you pick to go to your house or your store would be that one felt more arbitrary because I didn't have an indication of what might fall out of each of those.
Yeah, that was kind of just like an introduction to like your choices actually have like impact, where like if you choose one choice, you can't go back and choose the other.
Okay. And I'd say sometimes the backgrounds are it's hard to read the foreground elements off the background. It's pretty good overall, but there's like I think in the first factory, and then there's a section with some, I think it's a forest, where the backgrounds have like a equal or high saturation and contrast as the foregrounds.
Okay.
If you push those back, they'll pop off. The foreground stuff will pop off there.
I'm gonna have to kind of close it down. Peter, do you have any last minute things, or do you want to save it for the next one?
That's it. Cool. Good work. Good process.
I'll just say I really like that you talked about your influences and your prototyping. I thought that's always good to see. And definitely add your story to your trailer, because as soon as you said it was about mochi, I immediately got 10 times more invested. So put that forward with your game. It's a good selling point.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks, everybody. Thanks a lot, Jackie. Nice work.
Thanks.
Okay. So just a reminder to the reviewers, you can write feedback in the spreadsheet. And without further ado, let's kick it over to Willie, Hi, Nolan, and Ben. You guys can take it away whenever you want, and we'll try and make sure we stay on time. Good luck, guys.
All right, hello. I'll just share my screen now. All right. Hi, everybody. Our project is called Magneco. I'm Benjamin. I acted as the producer for the game, and I was also involved with the game design and created assets and scripts for the UI. Hello?
Yeah, we heard you, Ben.
Hi, I might be muted. Hi, are you muted?
Oh, maybe.
Something might be up with her mic.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead, Willie, I suppose.
Okay, I'm Willie. I was the lead programmer and designer of mechanics, as well as our Git IT.
I'm Nolan Olada. I was the level design lead, sound effects lead, did a little bit of programming, and also worked with an outside partner who's a music major on the soundtrack, Ari Sharfstein.
And Hi, if your mic's not fixed, I guess. She did basically all the art. She did character design, animation, background design, and some level design. So Magneco is a 2D cooperative puzzle game with magnetic cats, where each player has either an attraction or a repulsion ability. And before beginning this project, we sort of stopped and asked ourselves what sort of games we like to make or what we like to play. And we listed off a few puzzle games, a few platforming games, and a few couch co-ops games. And then later, we looked into some magnet-based games because we decided to move forward with that. So from all the puzzle games we looked at, we were heavily inspired by Portal 1 and Portal 2 because of the iconic puzzle design in that game. We liked how simple the physics-based puzzles were, and that sort of inspired us to look at other physics that we could explore to make puzzles. And we decided on using magnetic forces to do that. We also looked at Piku Niku and liked how the players could interact with one another and mess with each other, but we felt that it lacked that the players like filled a certain role because they just did the same. They could do the same actions. So this made us decide to take a more asymmetric approach to the game design to make it feel that each player's ability is sort of like a key to the puzzle. Finally, we looked at some magnet-based games. The two indie games that we looked at were The Adventures of Magnet Man and Super Magnetic Crush. Both are platformers where the singular player either activates their magnetic ability or uses existing magnetic fields in order to navigate the map. And we thought that two players would sort of fit the theme of magnets as well. So from this research, we wanted to create an experience that players would be forced to collaborate with one another through distinct but complementary mechanics. So our goal with Magneco was to create an experience where both players would think, experiment, be frustrated, and triumph together while challenging their coordination skills and problem-solving skills.
So the premise of our game is that a mad scientist has created a magnetic cat hybrid, which he's named Knife, and one day the laboratory's robot cat caretaker, Refrigerator, decides to free Knife from her incubation tank. After trying to escape the lab, they end up falling down a massive trash chute that goes all the way to the Earth's core, and from there both Knife and Fridge have to use their teamwork and their magnetic abilities to climb back up to the surface. Okay, so what do these magnetic powers look like? So to begin, each cat has a magnetic pulse that they're able to use. Fridge is able to repel things away from him, whereas Knife is able to pull things in. In addition to this, each cat has a more focused magnetic beam that they can aim in different directions, which is much less potent but more precise. And just like before, Fridge is able to repel things away, whereas Knife is able to pull things in. Using these abilities throughout the levels, they'll be introduced to a combination of platforming and puzzle mechanics that have to be mastered by both cats in order to progress. And throughout the entirety of the game, the two players must rely on one another's cooperation and their opposing skill sets to solve the many different puzzles they'll come across.
These are some of our earliest prototypes which showcase each specific ability that the characters have. The top left one being the direct push and pull beam. The top right showing how the players can interact with different blocks in their environment. And the bottom two examples showing the push and pull burst abilities, which players can use to affect blocks anywhere in the map. This is one of our earliest builds of the game, in which you can see the white blocks are the players, and they can interact with rail magnets, which are on the left, which are attached to the white rail lines. They can move along those lines, but not outside of them. On the right, you can see stacks of blue blocks, which are free magnets, which can be moved anywhere throughout the map. And here we see yellow blocks, which are fixed in space in the map, and the players can use them to push themselves away from them or pull themselves towards them.
So towards the beginning, we did a lot of sketching, and we wanted a more slower paced game that encouraged discussion between the two players rather than being a more speed running type of game. And so to do that, we came up with the idea of using more platformy mechanics along with puzzles that would be harder for the player to, just go through quickly. We also spent a lot of time planning out the characters, and originally we wanted a more complex design, but for the sake of saving time and running the game more quickly through the semester, we went with a simpler design. And so through the process of doing art, we found that a lot of the original concepts were a little bit too oversaturated for the game. And so you can see on the left-hand side where our blocks are, they originally were all the same color and design through each of the rows, but because of that similarity, players were unable to tell what different kinds of mechanics they could be able to do. Along with that, we had to change the background contrast to make sure that the players could see the foreground versus the actual background and understand what to actually interact with. Yeah. And so with playtesting, we were able to start really early due to our early prototyping with the squares rather than the full-on game. And even now we're able to encourage remote playtesting and get valuable feedback from our players through Twitch and YouTube and with friends online.
Thank you. I guess to end, I'd just say that moving forward, we still want to do playtesting and continue to build the game throughout the next few months, even though there are some challenges to that. But if you want to play it, you can go to magneco.itch.io/magneco to download it. It's 2-player, so you need 2 people. Thank you. And thanks, Ben Wander, for being our mentor.
Really good job, guys. Really good job. Let's kick it over to Peter to start this time since you got shafted last round. I think you're muted, Peter.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I have even less time again. So I thought your branding was great. It was nice and cute, and it got me invested really quick. It sort of evokes those like late stage Flash games, like the first Super Meat Boy. I like your mechanic. Like your core mechanic is really simple and easy to understand, and I think you guys did a good job presenting that. I just have a quick question, and probably don't have time for everyone on your team to answer this, but what was your favorite puzzle? Since I haven't gotten to play it, I don't know where it takes you. So I'm curious, like, what was the puzzle you think exemplifies your mechanics and your exploration the best?
There's one in the sewer level. I think it might be level 7 or 8. That is like the 2 players moving around a single block in the center, where they're sort of using rail magnets to unlock doors and push buttons. And it's kind of like a combination lock where they have to do the correct blocks in a certain order in order to advance. And I think that's it was really cool because it's really small, and the exit to the level is just out of reach to where you think, oh, it's right there. It's so close. It's going to be easy to get to, but you're going to have to go through this unlocking mechanism in order to get there.
Cool.
Pete, you want to jump in?
Yeah, so you guys said you wanted to continue to develop that. Is that are you aiming for like a commercial release or just like a for fun release but more developed?
Probably more of a for fun developed. I mean, ideally we would like to continue and sell this on Steam, but definitely it's not at that point yet.
Okay, so I would say a game. Is there a single player mode?
No.
A game that requires 2-player co-op is going to limit your audience a bit. I wanted to try it myself, but I didn't have anyone to play it with. So that would kind of if there, and usually it's hard too because on these kind of games, if you do add a single player mode, it's not as good usually as the 2-player co-op. So I'd say that would be a challenge to try and overcome.
Yeah, the whole reason we made it 2-player was so it would make it harder for you guys to critique.
Well, you got me.
Cool. Ben?
Yeah, I mean, I saw this game pretty early on, and so it's amazing to just see the amount of progress that you've made with it, specifically calling out some of the things that early were problems, like not being able to tell what was part of foregrounds and backgrounds, and not being able to understand what blocks were doing what actions. I think it seems like you've improved that and more, which is really great. Honestly, I would just love to play it and kind of get a look at it. I think, like Pete was saying, a puzzle game, usually you'd want a single player aspect into it, but if it's just like kind of this weird experiment, I think that's really cool. And I think, getting a person to play with you who might not necessarily play as many games, having having the game be slower really helps that. I'm kind of tripping over what I'm trying to say, but I guess what I'm saying is I appreciate that you took it in a slower direction as well, because I think that helps you in quite a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah, and one like issue I guess that we ran into in development was we designed for like PlayStation controllers only. So if you use an Xbox controller, the mappings get like messed up. So just a heads up if you actually play it.
Got it.
Cool. All right, thanks guys. That's all the time we have, unfortunately. So really
Thank you.
great job. And
Thank you.
yeah. So the next group or the next presentation is from Nathan, Secret Guide. Nathan, whenever you're ready, take over the screen.
Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Sweet. Hi everyone, I'm Nathan Craigstein, and my project is Secret Guide. Secret Guide is a 2-player mobile game that utilizes scavenger hunt mechanics to foster social connectivity. So why I created this game? I wanted to create a unique shared experience to discover and create a conversation. I envisioned Secret Guide to be able to play at events or with your own friends, and the goal is to rediscover your surroundings as you run and explore new locations and create a new experience with places, or create a new experience that you're familiar with. So what does Secret Guide look like? So Secret Guide is all about movement in the real world. I really thought the best controller would be your own body, and it's obviously the most fun is just to go around. Don't we all just wish we could go around right now in the COVID-19? And so how Secret Guide works is that you're partnered with whoever you want to be with, and you guys run around and send each other hints to different locations. This catch is that you can only send hints with 2 emojis. And so based off these emojis, you're basically creating your own puzzle that your teammate has to decipher and go to. A sample case that I thought of for my app would be if you're a freshman coming in to college. And if you're a freshman coming in, you don't really know the place, don't really know how it all works. And so you don't even really know your roommate. So maybe you and your roommate pick up this game, sign in together, and you guys can view your surroundings. So you learn a lot of places about where you are, and you guys have to figure out your locations. You have to figure out hints based off of where you have to send your partner. As you can see, they have to send them to Wardenburg Health Center, and so they have to scavenge through their emojis to figure out where to send them. And based off those emojis, their teammate will have to go there. Okay. Sorry, I can't make it full screen anymore. So influential precedents. So I got a lot of inspiration for this game from Pokemon Go. I love playing Pokemon Go. I found it really fun to be able to go wherever you want to go. I think they have the best community. They really took phone games in a new direction that I found was amazing, that you can meet people in real life using a phone game. And that's what I really want to use for my app. And then another game that I took huge inspiration from was Way. Way is a game that not many people have played, but it's really fun. You get to express yourself only through your person. You guys have to help each other get through different puzzle platforms. I really liked both of these games, and I want to merge these kind of mechanics of communicating through unconventional means and also real world interaction. So my process, I started off with a lot of paper prototyping. I went through many iterations of icons and screens, and I play tested with multiple people to make sure that my UI made sense. Speaking of UI, I also went through each iteration once I was making it into the digital realm. As you can see, it started off super busy. It wasn't my game at all. Just didn't look anything like it would be a unique experience. And then I simplified it down, found my unique color palette, and made it so that it was more unique. And then I developed this game on Xcode. I really wanted to test out my application development skills. And so I picked something that I didn't really have as much experience in, and I went for it using Google Maps, geolocation, a lot of other technical skills that I didn't previously have. And then I also, because this is a two-player game, I had to use backend. I decided to use Firebase. And that was a new experience for me too, to be able to communicate two phones that I've never over two players can play together. Testing was a lot of fun, especially when I was still prototyping, because it's a two-player game. I had to use two different simulators and send each other hints to make sure it would work throughout my testing process. I'd have to go from one phone to another to make sure that all the UI and everything was working. Overall, I really liked working on Secret Guide. I thought it was like a great project for me to test my technical skills. I think it's really fun to be able to give people puzzles and then decipher them. Each experience is unique based off of the people that you play with, and you really get to rediscover your surroundings. Thank you.
Yeah, great job. Does one of the reviewers want to jump in to start? Or do you guys prefer me to guide you? Go ahead, Ben, do it.
All right. I was hoping Pete would go because he hasn't gone first yet, but fair enough. So my only question with this game is like, I think that the tech is really awesome, and learning a lot of that sounds like it's really useful. The comparison with Pokemon Go, I think, was pretty apt in that, you know, Pokemon Go is also a location-based game. But when you're playing Pokemon Go, you have an action that you're doing at the location, and then you also have stuff that you can do between moments when you're at locations. Like you can, you know, you can look at your Pokemon. You can, I believe it's been a while, but I believe you can like open candies and stuff like that. How have you found your players react to like the actual fun of the game? Do you think that there could be anything that you could add to maybe make it more fun rather than just getting to a location?
Yeah, so that's a huge question that I've been thinking about a lot. I've gone through a couple iterations and I've taken a couple feedback. Currently, there's a score, and the score is based off of how many emojis you send to your partner. So the less emojis you send, the higher the score you get. So the goal is to make it so that they can figure it out with the least amount of emojis to get there. I think that's probably the funnest aspect of the game, is sending these emojis and then like figuring out what is it going on. I still kind of need maybe more of a reward for going to these places, but that's something I'm still working on.
Cool. Pete, you want to go next?
So so one player is sending emojis like the football, and the other player will see this emoji and think, oh, football stadium, and then they'll go there. Is that the idea?
Yes, except for they're both doing both roles at the same time. So
they're both sending each other
around and sending each other hints.
Okay. Yeah, I wonder if have you noticed that like once they've solved the clue, like, oh, it's the football stadium, does that like reduce how interesting the game is until you get the next clue?
Well, that's one of the reasons why I made it so that they both are active at the same time, is to kind of mitigate that.
Oh, okay. So like once I know I got the football stadium, then the thing that's keeping me going is I'm sending more clues to my friend.
Exactly.
Okay. That's it for me. I was just curious about that part.
Peter?
Yeah, I'd like to hear a little bit about what people were doing when they were playing it. Like Ben said, I assume once you solve the puzzle, it's sort of, you don't get to do much until you walk to the location and you can send the next clue. So I'm wondering what player feedback you have so far and how you're going to take that forward.
Yeah, so I've only managed to play test it a couple times because of the whole lockdown, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
That really put a bummer on an outdoor game. And getting play testers. But from what I've seen is that people really just like go there. And the reason why I made it so that they can send each other messages is so that they're more busy and they're having fun even while walking. So, and they can't see their own goal, and so they're just kind of hoping that their teammate gets there. I would definitely need to play test more once this lockdown is over to get more of a feedback on like what I should do in the in-between steps.
Yeah, that's all I got too.
I've got a quick question for you, Nathan. If both people are sending messages to each other at the same time, does that mean they're both trying to come together at a meeting location together as they move closer to one another? Or are they both sending each other locations? Like if one person's at the football stadium, the other person's at the health center, are they both like going to walk past one another? Or how does that work?
Well, that is actually a great question. I'm glad you brought that up because I forgot to say at the end of the goal is that the last goal would be the same. So if you guys are going across campus, and you could also play this with strangers. And so the goal at the end would be that your last goal, you guys don't know this, but you guys end up at the same place. So that's kind of the end thing.
Oh, so you're not telling them where you are. You get presented something that you just have to get them to that location.
Exactly.
Okay. I guess that makes much more sense now. So it's like you have a sequence of clues and then eventually you meet up at the end of it once you guide somebody through those clues effectively.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. Does anybody have anything else or are we good? All righty. All right. Thanks a lot, Nathan. Really good stuff. Yeah. Okay. So the next one, and we'll just go straight into it and gain a little bit of time back here, is Hunter with Steadfast Station. Hunter, you go ahead and take over whenever you're ready.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see. So if I do like this, is that perfect? Is that okay?
There's like a timer that we can see kind of up in the bottom right for your presentation. We can see your presentation slides. So there you go.
Okay, so yeah, so I am Hunter Howard. This is my project Steadfast Station. So what is this specifically? So this was intended to be a game built from the ground up to run on the web specifically. It kind of simulates a retro futuristic operating system that tasks the player with correcting problems on a space station using terminal commands as well as chats and characters. It kind of is intended to make like your computer becomes the computer of the character in the scenario. Steadfast was made with the intent of exploring a somewhat novel area of web development. Sites like Steadfast exist but aren't games, and of course there are games that are kind of similar to what it's doing but not so much on the web. Of course, requiring like installation, specific operating systems, etc., just kind of barriers to entry. And then Steadfast ideally is so exploring something new, making a game that's not in the web so much, but I think is a natural fit for it, as well as kind of removing those barriers to entry from games and just making it highly accessible. Like if you have a desktop or a laptop and browser, it's open and you can play. So as mentioned, there have been plenty of projects in the past similar to Steadfast that inspired it. Poolside FM was perhaps the biggest single inspiration, as it's a really good example of a website that simulates your operating system with a retro aesthetic, just all entirely on the web. As far as functionality, it's really just a wrapper for playing SoundCloud and YouTube playlists, though, so it's pretty limited, but it does draw a crowd all the same just because of that strong aesthetic. It's accentuated by the music and the videos, and it all works together to make a very cohesive experience. But I wanted my site game, of course, to be expanded in its functionality and have more interactivity because it's a game, not just there for showing media. In the game space, of course, the list is pretty long. A few notable examples from were like Hacknet and Emily is Away. These and others do the same thing. They kind of simulate the task of interacting with a fictional computer and operating system. And then, the complexity of these varies quite a bit. They're all going for different things, of course. Hacknet simulates hacking systems, retrieving data, and covering their tracks with various terminal commands. while Emily's Way is just kind of about making dialogue choices over time and interacting with these different characters. Both are pretty well praised. Steadfast's primary mechanics were inspired by the two of these pretty heavily. Her story was also an interesting example for me, just kind of on the aesthetic end again, just the way it kind of manipulates the screen, just like the rounding of the screen, the lights in the environment. That even though I didn't really take up so much the mechanics of that, just kind of watching that footage and making connections between things that you see. The game being on the web was just kind of made with foundational web code, so HTML, CSS, and JavaScript's really foundation. There's some jQuery involved as well, with kind of some additional functionality and smoothing things out. I also utilized a bit of Sass and Gulp, which was introduced to myself and others in a creative web development class this semester. And those were more just kind of things to help with the development side, not so much critical game files that are hosted with it, but definitely helped with getting live updates as it was made. The project went through a sort of kind of modular construction phase, of course, just working up in complexity, starting with just simple backdrop, status bar at the top, making a single draggable window, and multiple windows, chat box, everything just kind of adding one after the other. There's I kind of referenced some online tutorials. Those helped with some of the elements, like making windows draggable, styling those. The majority of the code is, of course, entirely original. The chat boxes look and functions and aesthetic was all just built from scratch. That was originally designed with options side by side, as you can see there, but was recently changed to be one on top of the other to allow for more space for text to machine. Icons on this desktop screen might operate similar principles to Windows. They are draggable as well and can, of course, open their respective windows on double click, as you can expect. And then, of course, the core of the gameplay is just in the terminal and the chat box. So players can type commands in the terminal or click on one of the dialogue choices in the chat box to progress the game. Those were iterated just over time as the game scripts was. The terminal itself, I knew I definitely wanted the terminal for just a way of input from the beginning, and I was planning on making that myself. I was wondering if that was just going to have to be made from scratch. I ended up coming across a jQuery plugin made by a guy named Jacob Jankovic, called just simply the jQuery terminal emulator. It was for just the creation of command line interpreters in web applications. So that was perfect. It had plenty of built-in functionality that proved useful for behind-the-scenes stuff, but it mainly just allowed for custom handling of user input, which was exactly what I needed. I was able to code in extensive logic to determine the player's path and give them tools and options for progressing the game as well. The last thing in the development was, the last big thing was the introduction of object-oriented JavaScript. It's just some objects on the screen here. This was something I hadn't used before specifically. I had been familiar with the concept of object-oriented programming in the past, but hadn't used it with JavaScript specifically. So I learned how to use it with that over the course of a few days, and then kind of restructured my existing code to make it so that icons, windows, and chat messages were all objects, and make everything so much cleaner and efficient. Just so that those were all kind of predefined and waiting in the wings instead of just being there. So after a lot of just learning and experimenting and different web development things, and really being my first strike at game design and writing, this is the end of it. Fully functional experience, entirely on the web, playable on any desktop or laptop device with browser, of course. The game saves progress locally, so you can close the window or refresh it without losing your progress. It's currently hosted just on the School of Creative server, but I would definitely like to have it on its own domain soon. I kind of pictured here just there's visual differences, but just the two different phases of the game. In the first, when you're playing, the players kind of helped along, learning the ropes, figuring out the systems. There's hints and messages that you get from one of the game's characters to kind of help you get accustomed to how things work. Then once you transition into the second phase, the help kind of goes away, and it's up to you to relying on what you already know about how things work, and then some different information that's available to kind of experiment and train a new set of goals. That is pretty much all I have on that side. Thank you.
Thank you. Really good job. All right, we'll kick it over to Pete first, since he didn't get to go first before.
Okay, so I played it for a little bit, and I wanted to keep going, but I got stumped after I had charged the battery and then attuned to a frequency. I wasn't sure how to progress past that. Maybe it was something obvious, but I couldn't figure it out. The atmosphere was really cool. I wanted a close button and a minimize button on the windows. Not sure if the game goes here, but it would be cool to be messing with the internals of that AI helper through the command line while it's messing with your desktop, like trying to log you out or something, and you have to use the command line to break back in. It was cool using different parts of the desktop experience to progress, like the command line, the little text documents you have. And you probably do, but it'd be cool to go farther with those too, like training videos or spreadsheets or other pretend programs. It had the sense of like I was hired for a job that I barely knew how to do, and I was trying to figure it out, which I think was cool. So that's my feedback.
Nice. Peter?
Cool. Yeah, I really like the look and feel of your game. I haven't gotten a chance to play it yet, but I will as soon as we're done with this. I'm curious, what's the sound profile like? Have you investigated that at all? And if you haven't, where would you want to take it, I guess?
I'm not entirely sure what you mean, actually. Just like
how does the game sound when you're playing it?
Yeah. So in general, there's just kind of an ambient, just rumble of like what I thought you might hear when you're just kind of hanging out in a ship up in orbit. So that you'll just kind of hear a basic rumble, but there are certain sound effects that will be triggered by various events, solving certain puzzles that you can kind of hear. And they're just like sounds like pulled from Freesound, but I tried to make them very muted and a little bit bassier, so it sounds like they're kind of outside somewhere, which may not make sense physically, but needed some indication that something was happening. So it's not super diverse, but there is something just to kind of enhance the atmosphere, I hoped.
Cool. Yeah, that's what I got.
All right, Ben.
Yeah, so I loved all the fact that it was all in a browser. I think that's great. I even wrote in my notes before you mentioned them, like I would love to show people Hacknet or Emily is away, but they can't see them if they don't know Steam or they don't know games or whatever. But I wasn't quite clear on what's like the actual driver of the game. Like I understand the interface a lot, and I think that's really cool and really neat. I love kind of fake computer interfaces. But what is it that you're trying to do, and how are you doing it?
Trying to think. Might stump me there.
Well, so you have an AI, right? And you're in a spaceship, and so it kind of like what's your goal on that spaceship, or what's the character's goal?
So it kind of changes over time, kind of at that phase loop there. The narrative purpose is basically just like it's your job to like when things on the station get kind of messed up, they're a little bit out of sync with each other. It's kind of your job to go in as a human aid to be like, okay, readjust this, put just certain things back in position, recharge power, restock certain things, and just doing all of that through the terminal.
Cool. Yeah, I think if I had some advice for where I would take this game moving forward, it would be to kind of flesh that part out a little bit more. I think it's amazing that people can play it from anywhere, but I think it's important to actually like get them like a reason to play it. A lot of sort of space terminal-y games have mysteries that happen on the ship, or something breaks and then everybody's in danger, or a lot more conflict in it. And I think with that, you could really go pretty far with it. And sort of like Peter mentioned too, making sure that the audio and the visuals and everything sort of reinforce whatever it is you want to reinforce. If it's like claustrophobia in like a really tiny ship, or if it's this really new age kind of Star Trek-like thing that you're interacting with, making it go one way or the other, I think could really pull people in. But I think this game has quite a lot of potential. I'm really excited for it.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot, Hunter. Really good stuff.
Thank you.
Okay. Next is Corbin with Peersy. Corbin, go ahead and
Woo! What's
take
up? All right, I'm Corbin. Oh, hey David, what's up? I'm glad you came. I wanted you to see this. It's web, so let's see. Oop. Can you all see my screen or like my presentation thing? Yeah. All right. Cool. So my project is Peersy, and the idea behind my project is similar to that of Zoom. I want to make web-based virtual reality meeting/socialization spaces. So I did this because current methods of conferencing are non-interactive and boring. And if you just look at the conference call right now, it's just a bunch of people like this. And yeah, I want to make it more fun, you know. So full disclosure, I started this before COVID was a thing, and I guess I kind of just got lucky that my project is more useful now than before. Yeah. So my main inspiration for this project was VR Chat, and VR Chat is a social app only for Windows. And while it's mainly focused for VR users, you can play without a headset using typical 2D screen controls like WASD, and using the mouse. And it's currently the most played VR multiplayer game out there. So I know there's definitely a market for something like my project. And tech. So I'm using mainly Unity and WebRTC. And why Unity? I had two main options for making this. I know Peter would ask this, A-Frame and Unity. So A-Frame is a JavaScript library for building web VR apps, while Unity is a game engine for developing on almost any platform. And in the end, I chose Unity because it has way more capabilities than A-Frame. And though the drawback to using Unity was, even though Unity itself is widely documented, the amount on building for web is very sparse, and building for web VR is even more so. And why WebRTC? I've been studying WebRTC since about last year, just because I used it for my internship. And for those who don't know, it's a peer-to-peer protocol, meaning that all the interaction between users is serverless. So the only thing that I have to do as a server owner is host the HTML files, and after that, I don't have to touch any of the multiplayer data whatsoever. And even though I used it because it's the tech I know, I also believe it to be the perfect tool for my project. Yeah, so iterations. I had a fair amount of iterations. So my first one was a citywide music visualizer, and this was it was single player, and I was struggling with WebRTC at the time and integrating it into a web VR build, so I decided to focus on a single player workspace environment. This is specifically for Windows, and it was using the Leap Motion for hand tracking. And let's see, I combined a bunch of Unity store assets with some tutorials I found online, and I made this whole citywide music visualizer. So you got spotlights everywhere, like a DJ stage. You got just the typical bar thing, and then in the background you got the skyscrapers lighting up. And it's completely dependent upon the computer's audio. And at the time of making the app, I only had one monitor actually, but I was able to trick my PC into thinking I had three. And this way I could stream 3 monitors into virtual reality while actually only have one in real life. And as you can see, yeah, you can play Minecraft across all 3. So my next iteration was a single player version of what my original intent was, which was like a meeting room. And you can present things and draw things. So while the music visualizer was cool, my WebRTC integration still wasn't done yet, and I was still having issues with it. And in the meantime, I wanted to focus more on hand interactions. And so for this one, I used the Oculus Quest, which is a standalone VR headset with hand tracking. Yeah, so I dove into spatial computing, which is the mixing your physical surroundings with the virtual. And so as you can see here, I was able to match up my virtual desk in the VR headset with the real desk. And I could use that as a touchpad to interact with different items, like like here you see me sliding like something like Google Slides. And then on the left, I got a RGB slider. So finally, I ended up with my final project, which is Peersy. At last, I finally cracked WebRTC with Unity and was able to make a peer-to-peer virtual world completely browser-based. And while initially we only worked on streaming data between peers, I eventually took advantage of the entirety of the WebRTC API, letting me use audio and video in my application. And so here you can see it's a virtual world with just me. So everybody has like a TV screen as their head, and then if they want, they can display their webcam onto there, and everybody can hear each other with audio. So the main focus of this iteration was the idea of accessibility. Even if you don't have a VR headset, you can still join the site and use typical video game controls, W, S, and D, to move the mouse or like touch around on the screen if you're using a phone. Even for Google Cardboard, it works to control your avatar. So yeah, because it's browser-based, you can access it from any device with any internet connection. There are no dependencies on operating systems or software updates/versions. I made this with customization in mind, making my own protocol for streaming multiplayer data between peers, as well as a modular object interaction system, so it'd be simple to create mods or plugins for the app. Making this was super fun and challenging, and it even pushed me to edit parts of Unity's build code to make the engine do things that it couldn't actually typically do. As you can see, players can choose their avatar. I'll show you guys in the demo in a second. And you can do things like draw, you can pick up objects, check them, talk to people. And things that I had been working on that I wasn't able to finish in time, but have in the works is I was adding the JavaScript API for Leap Motion for hand tracking, as well as I had a facial expression detection going on for non-video avatar heads. So if you didn't want to show your video exactly, you could have something like Apple's Animojis going on. So demo time. Hey, Peter, are you there? You want to unmute real quick?
Yes, I'm here. What's up?
Okay. I'm gonna. You have never seen my app before, right? Okay, cool. So if I send you a link in the ThingLab Slack, can you join it?
Sure.
Okay. Let's see. Is it sharing my entire screen, or is it showing my just my Chrome window?
The whole screen.
Okay, cool. Please nobody go to this link, because right now I have it set up to only work between 2 people. Okay, go to that link. By the way, turn off your webcam, because your webcam can only be used by one app at a time. And my app's gonna take up that slot. I'm also gonna turn mine off if I can figure out how to stop it on here. All right, here we go. Are you in, Peter?
Yep.
Okay, so if you look at my screen, there's gonna be two icons in the bottom left that are red. There's a camera and a microphone. You click those to enable audio and video. And if you hit the on button in the bottom left, it'll ask you permissions for those, hopefully. And if you hit allow, then as you can see, my face pops up in the bottom left. That's just my thing. Are you good? You in?
I'm in.
All right, cool. I'm gonna start the call.
Well, I got an error.
Okay, we're just, wait, are you using Chrome?
No.
Okay, fine. Just refresh the page real quick.
I can switch to Chrome.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Just refresh the page, and instead of hitting the video and audio, just hit the on button. So just in the meantime, on the right, I have these environments here, and you can switch between. This is the cloud one. You can, if you want, you can be in a castle setting, or an old Western setting, or you could be in a Viking house area, or an igloo. I'm gonna go back to this just to show off. Are you in?
It's still loading.
Okay. Just when it loads, hit the on button in the bottom left.
Oh, I shouldn't have hit it already?
What?
I shouldn't have hit it already?
No, it works if you hit it already. It's fine.
Okay.
So this is what it looks like in VR. You can interact with everything. Pretty much everything you can do in VR, you can also do on a 2D screen. So As you can see here, I'm on like a Catan-like board game. It's just a demo board game that I have going on. You can pick up pieces. Everything is real physics, which is pretty cool for a completely browser-based game. And then you can pick up pencils and draw. Furthermore, you can also, there's a mirror over here, and you can check yourself out. You can switch avatars as well by just hovering over different avatars. So typically, because of this is where my face would show up if Peter's camera was working, but I can switch avatars like that. You can go Spaceman. Yeah, are you in?
I'm in, but I don't see you.
Okay, you shouldn't yet. And maybe not.
In the interest of time, I believe you that it works. Maybe
it's fine. It works. But yeah, so that is my project.
Cool.
I want to give a huge thanks to Nikki, because when I was kind of down, like, I guess I'll keep doing this, he really inspired me. He really got enthusiastic about it, and as a result, I got really enthusiastic about it as well. So huge thanks to him. Yeah.
Thank you, Corbin. Yeah, really good job. We'll kick it over to the reviewers for questions. Ben, you want to go?
Yeah, I think that's a really cool use of technology. I mean, again, the fact that it's just in a browser along with some of these other ones, I think is really powerful. I'm curious how many other virtual chat spaces you've seen and kind of what influence you've gotten on those. And specifically, this reminded me a lot of Facebook Spaces. I don't know if you've played that, but it's like the Oculus space area. And I'm just curious, like, what you liked about that and what you would take from those versus what you would leave behind, and kind of who you think your audience is and what they would want.
Yeah, so I've never used the Facebook Spaces thing. I know the Oculus Horizon thing is coming up, which I think could be pretty cool. I'm assuming you know about that. But I just really like the idea of having this entire thing being browser based, and you can get it from anywhere. So the thing that is, I found this out about a week ago. There's another app out there called Hubs. It's by Mozilla. It's not peer-to-peer based. They have servers that run it. And it's like a little kids cartoon thing where you can join in VR or 2D on the web, but it's built in A-frame. And I think that because I built this in Unity, this app has so much more potential just because of the game engine behind it.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds neat. Pete?
Mm-hmm. And as far as I know, this is the first time that Unity VR or the web VR has ever been used with Unity like this. Everybody else always uses A-frame, so yeah.
So I like the browser-based accessibility. Have you heard of Tabletop Simulator?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I was just going to say you should check that out to see what you can steal, because they also have a VR mode.
Yeah.
And then I would say, if there's some way you can set it up to let other people make the environments and mods and stuff, I think that could help fill out a lot of the use cases without you having to actually do anything.
Yeah. Very much like VR chat. Yeah.
Cool. Peter?
Cool. So I've been flying around these virtual spaces for a while, and this runs really smoothly, surprisingly, on my computer. So that's probably
right? I was so
what
surprised.
Unity is doing for you. I think what I'd like to know, because I agree with a lot of the things that Ben and Pete have already said, is what is the prime number of people you see this for? It gives me the feeling, like Pete mentioned, of like a tabletop simulator, a tabletop game, but that's because of how you presented it. So I'm wondering where you see the limits of this, or what you want those to be.
So I initially went after like a business market where everybody would, you saw it in the hallway with the hand tracking on the Quest. I initially went for like business just because I thought, okay, that's probably what Zoom is initially targeting. And then after a while, I realized that there was, well, first of all, my market's so much bigger just because of the virus now, which is pretty sweet. Um, but after I started to play VR chat more because I had friends that played a lot, and I realized I didn't think it was that huge of a thing, but the amount of people that just go on there just to socialize, even without the virus, is pretty insane. So I think that the whole VR chat market would definitely be my prime focus initially.
Yeah, and then the only other thing I'm going to add to echo the web platform is, so I don't have a VR headset. I'm using it from just my desktop WASD. I think that's a really important inclusion, and I'm glad you have it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, cool, good work.
Thanks.
Pretty good stuff, Corbin. Really nice job.
Thanks.
Cool. On to the last and final group. It is Mind's Garden from Kara, Jared, and Peter.
Hey.
Hey.
How's this look?
Looks good.
Cool. So, I'm Peter Rosenthal. My teammates for this project were Kara Metcalf and Jared Myers, and we created the project Mind's Garden. Our presentation relies heavily on animated GIFs, and sometimes those lose frames when you're streaming it over web, like Zoom and stuff. So I think the reviewers got our one sheet thing, and that has a link to our presentation. So if you want smoother video, maybe check that out. So Mind's Garden, our game, is a musical exploration game and also an immersive audio visualizer.
So you start playing the game by choosing a song. You can either pick from one of the ones we have, or on the left, you can import your own songs. You can choose your themes, such as your biome and your color palette that you think fits your song the most, and then even a terrain seed, which can let you find the world again later. You spawn in the center by the big pond in the middle of the game. What you're supposed to do is collect these orbs, and they're all pieces of a song, so you can find them by listening for them. And you take them back to the pond and put them in, and they will make the entire world react with whatever piece of audio it has inside of them. And then you can walk around the world looking for the rest of the orbs, and the orbs that are in the pond and the orbs that you have on you will react to the world. And a little bit about the biomes. We've got the desert, we've got the ocean, and the forest, a little bit of snow in this one, and then the jungle. So some different options for your songs. And then of course, creatures like the eating plant and the bonefish.
So we started coming up with the idea for this project last fall, like everyone else doing Capstone projects. And we had a pretty solid idea of what we wanted to do. We wanted to create as many unique game experiences as there are songs in the world. So that requires people to be able to import their own songs, and then to create a game with experience centered around exploration and using audio to locate objectives and to visualize the world around you and have fun. So some precedents for our game is actually pretty much any audio rhythm game, whatever, even though our game doesn't use rhythm specifically, but Audio Surf was one of the first games that allowed you to import a song and then it generated a unique game experience out of that. Fract OSC is a lot more of that immersive audio visualizer experience with the game element of you being placed inside a synthesizer and you have to build up that synthesizer. So we took some inspiration from the gameplay there. And then Fantasynth is this VR immersive audiovisual experience. It's incredible, but there's no gameplay aspect to it at all. So then we went on to make prototypes. The top one we have there is a fractal generator and audio visualizer that we built in Unity, which is the game engine that we used for our final project. And then the bottom prototype is just a more aesthetic or visual prototype where we were messing around with different shaders and assets that we wanted to use to see how our game would feel and look. So then this semester we moved on to develop things. We started by creating a terrain for you to walk around in. This was procedurally generated using some of our own algorithms. that we created from tutorials online, but also doing our own things. And then we threw in some cool features like a breadcrumb feature of painting the ground behind you so you know where you've explored and where you haven't been.
There's also plenty of environments, like before you saw, there are different kinds of cultures. There's a bug simulation using a clocking algorithm, and then there's different spawning ends for the plants. Right here is the ocean one. You can see it spawning and then go to regular song-based animations.
Yeah, so once we got the terrain and assets all put together, we started focusing more on world building. Here, this GIF shows all the plants spawning in their respective biomes. The way it works actually is each of the orbs acts as their own spawners to instantiate the biomes around them.
We've also got lots of color palettes. We have 136 colors in a single palette and 816 colors total. This is the red palette up here.
So once we figured out all the colors we were using, it was quite a process to hook everything up to every single asset in the game. But we ended up coming up with these unique patterns, and the pattern that the color changes to the beat will be pretty simple at the beginning, but then as you progress through the game and place more orbs in the pond, the pattern will get more complex, as you see on the bottom.
We also paid a lot of attention to our menu functionality and UI design. From the main menu, there's a settings menu where you can actually pick the master volume of the song's pitch, as well as advanced graphical options. There's also a gallery in the main menu, which stores all your screenshots in order that you take them in the world. There's also a level select menu that you can see at the bottom there, where you can choose the biome, the color palette, and even input your specific terrain seed if you want to revisit a particular world.
So as with most games, it was a massive process to actually make it, and this was just like a really small teaser of everything that we actually did, but we documented it all week by week, and you can find that all in our GitHub or following this link if you are viewing our presentation.
So a lot of the feedback we got while playtesting centered around these three core principles. Mainly, we wanted to focus on visual guidance as opposed to auditory cues. This is mainly because it's an audio visualizer game, and we don't want that experience to be interrupted by any additional sounds in the game. So that was a big part of it. And we also have a lot of interactivity involved. You can see that when you actually get the orb, there's a flash of green, a speed boost, and then whenever you run into an enemy or something, it'll push you back, flash red. So other notes that we got was like simple stuff like making adjustments to how the world is responding to the audio, the player's speed and the terrain painting radius, as well as simple stuff about controls and UI, but we've been pretty good on that. So finally, here's our next step. We want to get this published on Steam. We currently have an itch page set up for it, but to get it on Steam costs around $100, and it's like a 3 months waiting period. But that is our final goal. We already have a Mac and Linux version, as well as a VR port, so it should be super exciting.
Big thank you to Ben. He's been our great mentor for us. Maddie's been a wonderful instructor all the way through, especially with COVID. And then Ian Pales, who's not here, but he did audit it a little bit with short notice. And then, of course, everyone else is here. Thank you for being here. It means a lot to us.
Thanks, guys. Great job. Cool. Let's kick it over to Ben.
Hey, really cool. I mean, again, I saw this pretty early, and it's come quite a long way. I thought you guys did an excellent job at taking everything at different musical aspects and translating them visually, depending on what the player is doing. The thing that I'd ask you is, I know you said it was still kind of just a fraction of what you wanted to do. What would you add mechanically? Like, what have you seen from your playtesters? What have they liked in terms of the gameplay, and how would you double down on the stuff that they enjoyed?
One thing I would have liked to add if I had more time would be everybody, including you, I believe, wanted more to the audio. Everything we did, everyone still wanted more. And I would have loved to add more particle effects, more blasts, more things happening to different beats on the songs. And we got some of that in by the end with the color palettes changing fairly drastically at the end on major parts of the song, but I would still like to do more with it if there was more time.
Yeah, our game isn't very mechanically intense, so we wanted to put more effort into the visual side of things. I feel like making it more responsive and more immersive, and just more of a spectacle to experience.
Did you find that making it a game rather than a visualizer helped, or was it like by the end, did you notice that more people just wanted a visualizer with sort of something distracting to do?
I don't know if I'd say it helped or didn't help. It was just kind of the medium that we ended up going with. It definitely allows for a certain type of experience when you're walking around in this environment as opposed to just sitting in a stationary location. And having the objective of going out and finding the orbs really makes it a lot more of a progression, and you're rewarded for it in a sense.
Cool. Yeah, really, really good stuff, guys. Good job.
Pete?
If you don't mind, I'd like to give my feedback after trying it out, because I tried to give it a go, but when I imported a song and pushed start, nothing happened. I can give you guys the Unity player log if that helps.
Did you import a .wav or MP3?
MP3.
So there's a lot of external interfacing going on with our game, and during the last couple of weeks, we've been doing a lot of solving issues, getting it run on different computers. That's been one of our biggest issues so far, and it will continue to be before we finish it and publish it, but we're solidly on our way to getting it working on everybody's computer, sort of a thing.
Cool. It looked cool. I was just disappointed when I pushed start.
Yeah, sometimes there's bugs and glitches, and we're almost done through them.
Peter?
Yeah, cool work, guys. One quick note: in your trailer, I noticed there's a track that says Cardi. I don't know if that's a Cardi B song, but if it is, before you go to Steam, don't use that song or get the license for it.
It's not included in the game. It's not even a Cardi B song, but that doesn't even ship with the game. That
It's
was
just the title from the guy who made it.
I just
don't know why he named it that.
I don't know Cardi music, so I just wanted to check and make sure.
All of the music that we're shipping with, sorry to interrupt, all the music that we're shipping with, we've figured out all of the rights to and stuff like that. It allows you to import your own songs, and that's kind of what you saw there. But and anything we ship with, we've been making sure we're good with.
Cool. And then the other thing I was wondering, and I'm just going to put both questions out there real fast, is you mentioned enemies, but it wasn't really clear what role they play in your experience, as well as how do those spheres take apart the song? That wasn't clear to me either. And what do the different components of the song relate to the environment?
So the way it splits up the song is actually with an application called Splitter. It is a Python executable that you can install on your computer, but we were having a lot of issues integrating it with Unity and C#. So ultimately what we ended up doing was using Splitter on our tracks that we got the permissions for, and then including those in the final build, which is already ready to go. So there are two modes. There's a Splitter mode, which has that feature where it splits the orbs up into their different instrumental components. And then there's a normal mode where it just raises the volume with every piece of the song that you collect.
Yeah, and on the enemies note, there aren't really enemies in the game. There's different objects in the world to interact with. They're kind of color-coded, red and green, but they aren't necessarily good and bad. The red things will knock you back, give you a little bump, and the green things will speed you up and boost you forward.
Cool. Thanks. That's all I had.
Awesome. All right, guys. Thanks. Really, really good job. And I just want to say again, for everybody, fantastic work this semester. These games look amazing. If the reviewers have more feedback, go ahead and leave it on the spreadsheet. It'll get over to all the students. So thanks, everybody. We'll take a 5-minute break or so here before the next group starts. Good job. Oh, and thanks again for all the reviewers. If you guys are still here, thank you guys so much for taking time to do this. Sorry I didn't say that out front.